Melania Trump's unexpected response to a simple question about Barron left everyone in the room speechless. You won't believe what she said next. It was a typical evening in New York City, a city known for its hustle and bustle, where high society mingles with the public and the streets are alive with energy. Among the many upscale restaurants lining the avenues, one in particular stood out that evening. The atmosphere was serene, the lighting soft and elegant, casting a warm glow over the polished marble tables and high-backed chairs. The diners inside were engaged in quiet conversations, their voices melding with the soft clink of fine china and the gentle hum of background music. This was a place where anonymity was the unspoken luxury, where even the most famous faces could blend in seamlessly if they so desired. At a corner table, away from the center of attention, sat Melania Trump. Dressed in a sophisticated, understated outfit, she looked every bit the poised former First Lady. Yet there was something different about her presence that evening. Despite her fame and high-profile past, she appeared to be seeking something most rare for someone of her status: peace and privacy. Her eyes were calm, almost contemplative, as she waited for her meal to be prepared. Surrounded by the quiet murmur of the room, it was as if the world outside had momentarily faded away, leaving just the moment and the ambiance of an ordinary night. But this tranquility wouldn't last long, for in a city that never sleeps, where every corner hides a story, even the quietest of nights can quickly be interrupted by the unexpected. The guests in the restaurant, who initially paid no mind to the celebrity presence in the corner, slowly began to take notice of the former First Lady's entrance. Despite her best efforts to remain unassuming, the magnetic allure of her presence inevitably caught the attention of the room. People whispered softly, some daring to take a glance, unsure whether it was truly her or simply a striking resemblance. Still, Melania sat calmly, not drawing attention to herself, as if she too was simply looking for a moment of reprieve from the world. Little did she know, however, that this ordinary night would soon become something extraordinary. A simple question from a curious hostess would turn this peaceful evening into a moment that would reverberate beyond the walls of the restaurant. It was calm before the storm, where everything seemed normal. Yet beneath the surface, a conversation was about to unfold that would touch everyone present in ways they could never have anticipated. The quiet buzz of conversations around the restaurant seemed to swell as the hostess made her way across the room. She was a young woman, not much older than her early 20s, and like most people in the service industry, she had grown accustomed to seeing celebrities. However, there was something different about Melania Trump. Her elegance and composure made her stand out in a way that captivated even those who weren't necessarily starstruck by public figures. The hostess, who had noticed Melania's reserved presence as soon as she entered, felt a surge of curiosity. After all, it wasn't every day that one had the chance to interact with someone who had lived such a remarkable life in the public eye. As she approached Melania's table, she hesitated for a moment. She was keenly aware of the line between politeness and intrusion, especially considering Melania's privacy-minded reputation. But the hostess had a genuine desire to know more. She had followed the Trump family's journey from the outside, intrigued by their dynamic, especially when it came to Barron Trump, Melania's only son. Barron had grown up largely out of the spotlight, and there were often only fleeting glimpses of him in the media. It was clear to anyone who had paid attention that Melania had always been incredibly protective of him, shielding him from the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Taking a deep breath, the hostess finally mustered the courage to speak up. "Mrs. Trump," she began, her voice respectful yet tinged with the curiosity she couldn't quite suppress. "If you don't mind me asking, how is Barron doing?" The words were simple, almost innocent, but they carried with them a weight that most people in the room likely weren't aware of. The room seemed to hold its breath as soon as the question left her lips. It was as if time momentarily froze, with every eye in the vicinity subtly turning toward Melania, waiting to see how she would react. The question was innocuous enough on the surface, but for someone like Melania, a person who had spent much of her life in the glare of the media, it was not just a casual inquiry. It was a glimpse into the intensely private world she worked hard to protect. In an instant, the dynamics in the restaurant shifted. No longer was Melania merely another diner enjoying a peaceful evening. She was the center of attention, and all eyes were trained on her to see how she would respond. Would she brush off the question with a diplomatic smile, or would her response reveal something more? The question about Barron, a topic that had long been a point of speculation and interest, had opened the door to something much more profound than anyone had anticipated. The energy in the room became palpable, charged with anticipation as everyone silently wondered how this moment would unfold. The hostess, sensing the weight of the question she had just asked, immediately regretted it. She had tried to be respectful, but she was acutely aware of the delicate nature of her inquiry. Melania Trump, after all, was not just any public figure. She was a mother fiercely protective of her family. The hostess felt a flicker of apprehension rise within her, unsure whether she had crossed a line. The atmosphere around her shifted too, with a subtle sense of discomfort hanging in the air. For a split second, she wondered if she had overstepped. It wasn't lost on her that she wasn't just addressing any person. She was speaking to a former First Lady, a woman who had lived through political and media storms for years, all while navigating the intense scrutiny placed on her and her family. But then, something in Melania's eyes shifted. The calm, guarded exterior she usually wore softened just a touch, and there was a moment of warmth in her expression. The hostess, standing there nervously, noticed this subtle change and took it as a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, the question had touched on something deeper and more human than she had initially expected. Melania's gaze was steady, and there was no immediate anger or frustration in her posture, only a quiet contemplation that seemed to say, "You've asked about something important to me, and I will answer you in kind." This reassured the hostess, who was still uncertain of the boundaries between courtesy and invasion. For a moment, the hostess stood there, feeling as though the world had paused around them. Despite the tension that had momentarily swept through the restaurant, the stillness between them spoke volumes. It wasn't just the question of Barron that mattered. It was the way Melania, in her own subtle and composed way, was now signaling that this was more than just a public persona. This was about her life as a mother and the love she had for her son. The hostess, realizing the weight of the opportunity she had before her, felt a surge of empathy for Melania. Here was a woman, once thrust into the glaring spotlight of politics, now choosing to reveal a glimpse of her heart, her vulnerability as a mother, if only for a fleeting moment. In the seconds that followed, the rest of the room seemed to hold its breath. The tension was no longer about whether Melania would respond, but how she would choose to share such a personal part of her life. The hostess had opened a door, one that would soon lead to a deeply emotional, revealing exchange. And yet, as the air hung heavy with expectation, it was clear that this moment would be more than just an ordinary interaction. It was a chance for Melania to show her humanity, her grace, and her strength in a way that no one expected, least of all the onlookers in the restaurant. The true heart of the moment was about to be revealed. For a brief moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance. The room, which had been filled with the gentle hum of conversation just moments before, now held an eerie silence, as if everyone had collectively stopped breathing. The hostess stood there, her heart racing as she waited for Melania to respond. She could feel the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. Had she made a mistake by asking such a personal question? Would Melania, who had built a reputation for maintaining a certain level of privacy, brush off the question with a polite but distant response? Or worse, would she become upset, distancing herself from the young woman who had dared to bring up her son? The tension was palpable. The entire room seemed to lean in, their eyes subtly shifting between the hostess and Melania, unsure of what would happen next. Some diners had paused their meals, while others had stopped talking, their eyes subtly turning to observe this delicate exchange. It wasn't just Melania's potential response that had everyone on edge. It was the underlying question of how a public figure, constantly in the spotlight, would handle an inquiry into their private world, especially when it involved something as precious and personal as their child. Melania Trump had always been cautious when it came to her family, particularly Barron, and her response was likely to set the tone for how the public would perceive her once again. Would she reveal a softer side of herself, or would she retreat behind the well-known walls of her public persona? But as the moments stretched on, a shift occurred. Melania, who had been calm and composed throughout the dinner, didn't seem uncomfortable with the question. Instead, she looked up from her plate, her gaze steady and unwavering. It was clear that she was taking her time to process the question, not in a defensive way, but in a thoughtful and deliberate manner. She wasn't rushing to answer for the sake of politeness. There was something more at play here. Perhaps she was seeing the sincerity in the hostess's eyes, sensing that this wasn't just an idle inquiry, but a genuine desire to understand. It became clear that the tension wasn't a result of anger or frustration, but of a moment where Melania was contemplating how much of herself she was willing to share. The room remained still as everyone waited for her response. It wasn't just the hostess who felt the weight of the moment, it was everyone around her. In the span of a few seconds, the question had transformed from a simple inquiry into something more profound. People were no longer just watching Melania for a reaction. They were waiting to see a glimpse of her humanity, to witness whether she would allow herself to open up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Melania spoke. Her voice, calm and measured, broke the silence in the room, carrying with it a sense of warmth and depth that few had ever expected to see in such a public figure. "Barron is doing wonderfully," she said, her words sincere and without hesitation. The hostess, still standing before her, listened intently, her earlier nervousness fading as Melania's tone seemed to embrace her inquiry in a way that was unexpected but deeply appreciated. "He is growing into a young man with a kind heart and a strong sense of purpose," Melania continued, her words carrying an undeniable pride. In that moment, the room seemed to exhale. The tension that had hung so thick in the air dissolved, replaced by a shared understanding of the moment's significance. What had begun as a seemingly innocent question about Barron had quickly morphed into something much more, an intimate glimpse into the life of a mother who had, up until now, kept her emotions carefully guarded from the public. As Melania spoke about Barron, it was clear that she wasn't just giving a public relations answer or trying to fulfill an obligatory response. She was talking about him with genuine affection, sharing the love and pride that she had for her son, something far more personal and human than anyone in the room had expected. Her next words were even more revealing, laden with the kind of emotion and vulnerability that few could have anticipated. "As a mother, my greatest hope has always been to give him the strength to be himself, no matter what the world says," Melania said, her voice taking on a deeper, more reflective tone. She paused for a moment, collecting her thoughts before continuing. "It hasn't always been easy, but I am proud of the person he is becoming." There it was. A rare, unguarded moment from someone who had lived much of her life in the public eye. The crowd, which had once been so tense, now felt like silent witnesses to a personal and profound moment. The hostess, deeply moved by Melania's words, found herself speechless. She had asked a simple question, But what Melania had offered in return was something far more valuable, a glimpse into her role as a mother, a woman who, despite the complexities of her public life, still felt the universal joys and challenges of raising a child. Melania's words weren't just an answer. They were a testament to the strength and love that defined her as a mother. In this quiet, unexpected exchange, Melania had shown the room not just her grace, but the depth of her heart. As Melania's words settled in the room, an undeniable shift occurred. It wasn't just her response that had impacted the people present. It was the raw emotion she had conveyed, an emotion that transcended her public persona and allowed the room to see her as a woman, a mother, first and foremost. What had started as a simple inquiry into her son's well-being had opened up a floodgate of emotions, reminding everyone in the room that behind the composed exterior of Melania Trump lay the heart of a mother who deeply cherished her child. For the hostess, the weight of Melania's words felt like a personal revelation. She had approached the table with a question that many might have shied away from asking, unsure of the boundary between public curiosity and private pain. But Melania's openness had defied all expectations. The hostess now understood that this moment wasn't just about getting an answer. It was about acknowledging the strength and resilience that comes with being a parent, especially in the face of such intense public scrutiny. The atmosphere in the restaurant, which had initially been heavy with tension, now shifted to one of quiet reverence. The diners, who had been observing from the sidelines, felt the powerful impact of Melania's response. It was as if they had been invited into a sacred space, allowed a brief moment to witness something deeply personal. They saw not just a former First Lady, but a woman who had faced the unrelenting pressures of the media, politics, and public life, all while fiercely protecting her family. The walls that usually separated her from the world, the distance she maintained as a public figure, seemed to melt away in those few sentences. For many in the room, it was a reminder that no matter how famous or influential someone might be, they too carry the weight of universal emotions, the love, the worry, the pride of being a parent. There was something deeply human in Melania's words, something that connected her to everyone present, no matter their background or station. The diners, who had once viewed her as a figure of mystery, now felt as if they understood her a little more. In that moment, Melania had shattered the facade of the celebrity persona and allowed the vulnerability of a mother's love to shine through. The emotional impact of this exchange lingered long after Melania had finished speaking. Her words had revealed a side of her that few had ever seen, a side that was far removed from the headlines, the controversies, and the politics. In that moment, Melania Trump had become more than just a public figure. She had become a symbol of the strength and resilience that comes with motherhood. It was a rare and intimate moment that left everyone present, reflecting not just on the power of her response, but on the universal bond of parenthood that transcends fame, politics, and all the noise of the outside world. As the evening drew to a close, Melania's candid response about her son, Barron, had left an indelible mark on everyone in the room. Her rare display of vulnerability and love for her child revealed a side of her that few had the privilege to witness. What began as a simple question had transformed into a powerful reminder of the strength and humanity behind the public figure. As the diners continued their meals, the conversation had shifted, no longer about the headlines, but about the personal connection they had just witnessed. If you found this moment as moving as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories.